Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, we'll be looking at the long range outlook. But I also will be addressing the short and medium range the next, 1.5 weeks in the first few minutes. So if you want to skip ahead and not really care about that, you can just skip ahead towards the later part of the video. Basically, we are going to be experiencing warmth. A lot of warmth and a very summer-like pattern across much of the United States. There will be precipitation events that will be occurring in a very summer-like fashion. There aren't going to be any big fall systems or winter storms. If you recall, I made a few videos, I guess a week and a half ago, about that potential. That, again, I called it a potential because it was just a potential. And with the weather, that's how quickly things change now. It seems as if the weather models have really gone towards that heat and stayed with it. So we'll be addressing that, but potentially towards the middle and early part of October, there will be some sort of a pattern change that could be bringing some more exciting weather conditions into the United States. But again, that is still pretty far out at this point. So notice that above my head, there's obviously that satellite view of the weather of the United States and southern Canada, northern Mexico. Notice that right now there are definitely things going on, but none of them are of severe nature. As you can see, that the Weather Ready Nation map of the National Weather Service above my head doesn't have any advisories or warnings. It is completely blank. There are a little bit of frost and freeze advisories across the Northeast and New England, but that's pretty much it. So if you live across those areas, definitely be prepared for some frost and cold, especially if you're a gardener, but I'm sure you already have that on your phone and you can see it. Otherwise, the frost and freeze threats across the rest of the United States are going to be very minimal in the coming weeks. So right now we're going to be looking at the GFS. Notice that in the very upper right hand corner there's a timestamp where, if I may not be mentioning it because sometimes there's so much things to say, I forget at what current time frame the map we're talking about is, and I just don't mention it, and it may be very hard for you to see. So in the upper right hand corner I addressed that issue by putting a little timestamp there, and hopefully you will now be able to track along where and when these things that I'm going to be talking about may be occurring here on this main map. We'll start off with the GFS. Notice that we are experiencing quite a bit of precipitation right now across the central United States. It is a very large, drawn-out system. It has many different precipitation bands, but again, it is mainly driven by mesoscale convective features. There isn't a big storm that is really driving all of this. There was some signs potentially earlier on a few days ago that there could be. There will be a larger one forming this week, but it's, again, very summer-like. There is nothing really driving this. It's just kind of moisture being moisture, if you will. I noticed that there's a low pressure very far north into southern Canada there, scurrying away, and the map is pretty much low pressureless across much of this time frame. Notice again, as I mentioned, there will be something developing into this early part of this upcoming week across the Midwest. Now that could potentially form into a larger system. Again, nothing to go home about. This is still a very weak, disorganized, summer-like system. Notice that it is essentially sandwiched by high pressures from all sides. Look, high pressure here, across the west, and across the northwest. The GFS does show this pretty aggressively. The European does not. So it's probably going to be a combination of those two, where there's going to be some activity, just maybe not as widespread as the GFS shows, and as for so many days, the GFS essentially shows a washout, while that most likely won't be the case. You can see, though, other than that, the pattern is boring. That's another reason why I haven't really been making videos, if I'm being totally honest. I mean, talking about the heat and warmth obviously is something to talk about, but it's kind of boring. The heat isn't really getting to dangerous levels, as you're not going to most likely get heat strokes from 80-degree weather across the northern United States, because that is still very above average for this time of the year, but again, it's not necessarily dangerous. There could be some other conditions that are more dangerous associated with it, like potentially drought becoming worse across some areas, but again, just a very boring pattern, which is good for enjoying the fall weather. It's going to be beautiful, but not so good for making weather videos about it. Note that, as you get towards this upcoming weekend, the pattern really continues to be dry. There's some showers, maybe a storm of some tropical origin coming across in northeast there, New England. Again, that's a little too far out at this point to talk about in detail, but again, pretty boring pattern. No big ridges, no big troughs, which usually drive our weather systems here across the United States and southern Canada. Just moisture that is kind of freely hanging around. So if you don't like chaotic weather, this is a perfect pattern. This is what you would like. And yeah, as I get towards it now, the long range, you can see that we see potentially some high pressures moving in, but going, no real cooldowns with them. More moisture coming in into the early part of October. Just a complete and total weather coma, essentially. Nothing really interesting going on. And I want to now show you the temperatures that are going to be associated with this, because that is the only kind of interesting thing about this. So again, I'll be showing you the GFS, and notice that right now we are dealing with warm temperatures. This is now Tuesday, September 23rd, 24th, Wednesday. The only areas that are going to be potentially cool are with that storm system that develops, a cloud cover associated with that may develop a little bit of coolness. But again, look at that heat towards the north and to the south. All around it essentially surrounded by anomalies that are really, really powerful. The GFS especially showing some really incredible heat in terms of anomalous means across southern Canada. Do note that, again, it's cold this time of the year normally across those areas already, so this isn't going to be producing hundreds, but 80s, mid 80s. That is incredible heat for this time of the year. But again, I mean, 80s, it's not going to kill you if you step outside. It's just going to feel nice. So across many of these areas, again, the heat is extraordinary for this time of the year, but not dangerous, just kind of pleasant. There will be some areas further south that may be developing, again, into the uncomfortable region of heat, but thankfully for you, the anomalies most likely won't be quite as incredible as what we are going to be experiencing across the northern plains and northern or southern Canadian prairies. And note that, yeah, as I extend this into October, into the first days of October, the heat continues and it lingers. Again, the only cool air that is associated on this map is going to be brought by maybe a weak cold front, some cloud cover, nothing extraordinary. And without a cold air mass to kind of, I guess, be with that heat, it doesn't, there's no storms like to kind of develop between those really strong cold or warm air masses, and without that, the storms just basically go like, we're just gonna kind of like spread out and produce some showers and storms across the United States and Canada, and that's what we're going to be looking at, which is nice, but it's boring. And note that the models do show a little bit more cool air finally, maybe moving in towards the end, very end of this forecast. Again, this is very far out though, so any signals from this are going to be weak and probably changing constantly. I want to now show you the European model. So let me show you the 2-meter temperature anomaly as well for the European model. Again, this is a slightly different model. I won't be showing the precipitation side of it because the European doesn't really show anything different from the GFS, just kind of showers and thunderstorms that are going to be non-severe, by the way, because I mentioned a summer-like pattern, but the heat and moisture are still less than what we would typically see in the peak of summer. So the thunderstorms, they don't really have a great chance to be severe. Obviously, still be wary. Thunderstorms anywhere can still be damaging with flooding, rain, or just even worse, lightning strikes that are dangerous. So be watchful, but no real severe weather outbreak going on. It's going to be a peaceful, very peaceful fall. And notice that as we put this in, the European intensifies the heat as we go further and further into the long range, into October 4th, 5th. At this point, we are getting to the very far out time frame. So the heat at this time will, we take it with a little bit less confidence because it's so far out. But notice that there is no signs of cold. If anything, the heat continues to intensify. And let me show you these 2-meter temperature Fahrenheit readings. So again, this is at this point October, and most areas across the Midwest would be experiencing a frost or freezes within a week's time from this date. And notice instead we're stuck with 70s and 60s during the night, which is going to feel really nice. It's going to be a beautiful fall for many of these areas, which I mentioned in my fall forecast I thought was going to happen. But it's just really peaceful. No real weather events that are going on in terms of great magnitude. You can see the precipitation map is pretty bare, especially according to the European model. But as I mentioned, there could be a potential pattern change in the long range, in the very long range, and I want to show you that. So the first clue we get is from the GEFS ensemble. So on Tropical Tidbits, the website I'm using, these models go out, this ensemble goes out to 840 hours every night at the midnight model run. So it's I want to show you that. So right now, again, up until the 384 hours, it shows warmth, and even beyond that, the next 200 hours, it shows warmth until October 8th, 9th, 10th. But notice that the heat begins to diminish. That is probably more to do with the lack of confidence as the models kind of begin to go their own ways. So having an impressive heat core with high magnitude is less likely as you get further out. But notice that there's also a little bit of blue color showing up across southern Canada, into the central United States, potentially across that, around that middle of October time frame. Now again, whether or not this pans out, we will just have to wait and see. But it's definitely a shift for a pattern change, potentially, especially given the fact that we are experiencing so much heat that is just interrupted heat. So that would definitely be interesting. The models do show that just coming back, the heat eventually, which may be possible. Again, as I mentioned, I thought that September would be very warm, along with October, in my long range or in my fall forecast. But I would normally not take this as seriously, but the Climate Prediction Center kind of agrees with this, the cool weather around that time frame, and I want to show you their 3 to 4 week outlook. So I have the 3 to 4 week outlook pulled up from the Climate Prediction Center. They release these every week on Friday. And notice that the one they released on the 19th, so just yesterday, as of recording this video, shows a little bit of those blue colors potentially across the northern United States and equal chances across kind of the central United States. So again, maybe not a massive cold pattern, but compared to what we've been seeing, that would require a large pattern change. And you can see it stems for a large period of time, 4th through the 17th, so kind of that first half of October. Notice that they also moved that precipitation towards the eastern seaboard in the precipitation probability outlook, which basically kind of indicates that they think there'll probably be some sort of a cold front that scours out that moisture and brings it more towards the eastern United States, and behind that cold front, below average conditions in terms of moisture take place, which is usually associated with after a cold front. So we will have to wait and see. This would indicate a large pattern change. Right now, the models, I mean, again, this is farther out than most of the models go, but the models aren't really showing any signs of this just yet. So I will be making update videos, but probably just not as frequently, maybe, 2 to 3 times a week, because it's, just not anything significant to talk about, nothing really to prepare people for and warn people for. Just a very nice fall warm pattern. That is basically it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next episode. See ya. Bye.